Hello and welcome back to Bookish and welcome to my Saturday Hodgepodge for this week. This is my weekly wrap-up of books, bookish things, sometimes booktube. My dogs are going to serenade you like teapots back there, and I suspect the first squirrel or butterfly, well, it won't be butterflies today, but or bug that lands outside, they're going to bark, so you'll have to forgive me in advance for the cuts where I cut out their barking and my yelling at them to stop barking. Anyway, a few things I want to talk about today. I think today will be a pretty quick one. I wanted to start off with what I've been reading. It is booktube after all. I probably should pay some attention to those kind of things. So I finished Angle of Repose by Wallace Stegner. It's a pretty chunky book. Comes in about 632 pages. It is an epic of the American West and the exploration of marriage and the exploration of family and perhaps patterns from past generations that should not be repeated by people in the future, the damage that people within families can do with one another, and I really enjoyed it. You know, it is a long book, and I'll be honest with you, I don't think there was ever a moment where I wished it was shorter. I don't know about you, but when I'm reading a long book, there are often times when I think, I'm really enjoying this, but I'm oftentimes anxious to get on to the next book, which is probably a bad quality. But this is not one of those books where I thought I really wish, I could get to the end of this book. I really liked it. I do think there are a couple of things, that by today's sensibilities, kind of stand out. The book was published, I think, in 1970, so it has a little bit of that 1970, 1960s stuff in it. And even though it's a book about the West, it is a book about settlers moving west, and very little attention is paid to the problem that creates for Native Americans. It is really not a topic of the book at all, even though Helen Hunt Jackson, the actual person, Helen Hunt Jackson, does make an appearance in the book to kind of at least bring up the issue of the treatment of Native Americans. That's largely not included. There is one use of the N-word near the end of the book, which I just found to be completely odd and unnecessary. I'm not saying that Stegner or his characters were racist, but just a reference to something, kind of a cultural artifact from the past that he names, the name of which would include the N-word. It includes, and I just, again, I realize this is 21st century sensibility, but it kind of, stuck out and kind of caught my attention. I did think the ending was a little weird, but the book on the whole is very good. Some great nature writing, some great characters, a story that I found myself drawn back to over and over again. It is a very good book. This is a book that had been recommended to me several times by Kelly from Books I'm Not Reading. And please don't take that thing I said about the N-word or Native Americans, to me, and I don't think the book is very good. It is. I'm so glad Kelly recommended it to me. It's a book that I am happy to have read and a really pleasurable reading experience. I am about 100 pages away from finishing The Other Name by Fosse. I hope I said his name right. I think I said it different every time. This has been a somewhat challenging read in the sense that it is largely stream of consciousness, and it reads, it's kind of mesmerizing, and in this kind of incredibly, I think so far, beautiful way, repetitive, and you kind of accumulate details. Sorry about the dogs. You kind of accumulate details and pick up on elements of the story and gain these realizations slowly. It's been pretty remarkable, and I'm enjoying it, but it's not a book that I can read quickly. I was hoping to have that finished by today. It won't be. Also, I'm going to start this week reading The Body Artist by Dellilo. It was a really short book. I think it's the book that immediately followed Underworld. This is part of a project I have to read books on my shelf that have been there for years. This book has been on my shelf since 2001, unread. That's 20 years now. And so I'm going to get to that this month, and every month I'm going to read one book that's been on my shelf for a long period of time. I'll probably choose short ones for months where I have busy reading months, like next month. But I did want to get to that, and I'm going to start that today. So that's kind of my other reading. I did want to kind of talk just a little bit about something that came up in the comments section of my video about the inauguration that I put out on Thursday. And this is this is something I think that it's important for us to remind ourselves of as we have a new president of the United States. And that is what I would call the danger of what I refer to as hero presidents. Hero presidents attract a cult-like following, and that cult-like following can lead them and excuse a lot of their behavior. One of the things that makes Washington remarkable is that after winning the American Revolutionary War, no matter, Steve, how important you thought he was to that effort, after winning the American Revolutionary War, Washington resigns his commission and kind of determines to go home to Mount Vernon and retire, even though he could have easily stepped into a leadership role immediately, taken the reins of the new government, and led the nation as long as he wanted to. And certainly there was a lot of support for him doing exactly that, but he didn't. He avoided the trap of the hero president. But to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, and there really haven't been very many of these presidents in American history. Just to kind of run through real quickly, Andrew Jackson was a hero president. Now, one of the things that makes a hero president is having something that his people or his supporters will see about him as heroic or important or different. But really what they are is they're oftentimes the leaders of a political movement which gains tremendous popularity. And the Democratic Party, as it exists today, was more or less created around Andrew Jackson, and the party was what Jackson was. So, the Democratic Party was pro-slavery all the way through the Civil War, and the Democratic Party remained hostile to civil rights all the way through into the 1960s. And in part, that's because Jackson was a slave owner and Jackson was a racist. Jackson, during his presidency, was oftentimes referred to by his enemies as King Andy, because he seemed to want to rule more as a king than as a democratically elected president. And this is what the hero president is. So I know, looking back and thinking about American history, a lot of people assume the next hero president was Lincoln, but it's important to remember Lincoln was not tremendously popular during his presidency. And at the moment where he probably was, reaching the height of his popularity, he was assassinated and killed. That then brings us forward in time, I think, to Teddy Roosevelt, who would certainly fit that kind of hero president bill. He was a heroic person, a larger-than-life person. He attracted an almost cult-like following among lots of Americans, and he was kind of a leading progressive. Even though he's a Republican, he was a leading progressive at the time. But, Roosevelt, kind of like Washington, in following the Washington two-term limit, decided not to run for re-election as president in 1908, because if he had, he would have been elected. He would have ended up serving, a long time, or a lot longer than the 8 years that Washington kind of established a tradition to. So he didn't run again, and so we don't know, if he would have then abused his power as Andrew Jackson did, if this kind of cult following would have made him so popular that he became a threat to democracy. But we do know that his relatively distant relative, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was first elected president in 1932, did achieve that kind of hero president cult-like following, which allowed him then to break the Washington two-term tradition and to run for a third and then a fourth term and to lead the United States through the Great Depression and World War II, which kind of cemented that hero status. And, Roosevelt is frequently thought of as one of the great presidents in the history of the United States, and deservedly so. But this kind of heroic cult-like following that built around Franklin Roosevelt, and in part because he put together a new coalition of voters to help he and the Democratic Party win elections from 1932 for quite some time, that cult-like following did lead to abuses or attempted abuses of power. Certainly Roosevelt's attempt to pack the courts so the Supreme Court would not act as a check on the power of his ability, he and Congress's ability to create New Deal programs. That is an abuse of power. That was an attempt to subvert the Constitution, which, was actually turned aside by senators from his own party and congressmen from his own party who refused to go along with it. Maybe our next hero president would be Reagan. Maybe, again, Reagan was kind of the leader of a new coalition of voters, which kind of swept Republicans to power and repaired the party after the damage done to Nixon. And then Trump, the latest of our kind of hero presidents, and I won't go into all the way in which that kind of idea of Trump being a hero to his followers led to potential damage to our democracy, because we all still remember January the 6th and how that cult-like following creates a real danger to the Constitution democracy. But I mention all this because, obviously on Wednesday we inaugurated a new president. Joe Biden became president. And it is important, I think, for all of us not to, particularly those of us who were exhausted by the Trump presidency, and those of us who welcomed and were excited and emotional about Biden's inauguration, because from my point of view it helped save American democracy. It's important for us not to invest Biden, I think, with that kind of total loyalty, hero worshiping, cult of personality danger to the United States government and the Constitution. That we need to remember that presidents are public servants. They're there to do what is best for us, and they're there to represent us, and we are part of keeping them in check, as is Congress. Now, I don't think Biden is the kind of person, in part because of his age, in part because he is a little irascible, as he's already proven. I don't think we're going to have that same kind of hero status, but it's important to kind of keep those things in mind and to keep that tendency in check. So I do want to mention that, a little history discussion there also. Sometime this coming up week, I'm going to try to find the motivation to rearrange the study. This is my study at my house, the room where I film, I guess, 92% of all my videos. And what I want to do is I want to move the bookcase, the tall bookcase that's behind me, from that kind of diagonal wall back there and put it on this wall over here where it would logically go. I'll move the couch to the diagonal wall. That will give me a wider room, and then I can make decisions about other things. One reason why it's going to take some motivation is I have to take down the pictures on the wall and rehang them, and I have to take all the books off the shelves and then move the shelves and put the books back. And that sounds like a lot of work, but it is something I want to get done. So hopefully when you come back Saturday, you'll see the room in a little bit of different configuration. The last thing I wanted to mention is a channel that I found on YouTube. I did the backstage book tag that Rainier created and tagged me, and I did that on Tuesday. And there are a lot of answers I thought I didn't do particularly well on. And the last one was, what kind of a media consumer are you? And like I think everybody who's answered the question, I watch a lot of YouTube. I watch BookTube. I watch YouTube to find out like how to fix my washer dryer and stuff like that. And I watch all kinds of videos, and I've kind of brought a lot of those things out. And the new channel I found, and this is not a small channel, this is not me trying to boost a small channel in this case, but the new channel I found is called The Nerd of the Rings. I'm sure many of you know about it. But just some really excellent videos and deep dives about the Tolkien universe and Middle-earth and all the stories surrounding Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion, etc. And I just really enjoyed it. Being a history person, even the history of a fictitious place is something that's of interest to me. So, if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, if you like to nerd out about Lord of the Rings stuff, for instance, the way I found the channel was they had a video about Tom Bombadil and 5 theories about what Tom Bombadil actually is, which immediately attracted my attention because he's the most enigmatic, I think, figure that exists in the Lord of the Rings books. So I watched that, and then I just got hooked on watching a lot of the videos over there last night as I was having trouble sleeping. Anyway, so I'll leave a link to that channel down below. If you get a chance, go check. And you're a Lord of the Rings person, go check it out. Anyway, there you go. I think that's it for my Saturday Hodgepodge this week. Look forward to your comments in the comments section below, and as always, thank you for watching.